sannyasa yoga, the path of renunciation of action. So I'll do what we've been doing lately. I'll chant the verse and then everyone can repeat, or actually, why don't we just chant it all together? Maybe that makes more sense. I mean, with the mics off, because that just works better with Zoom. Should we do it like that, Chintamani, or what do you think? Should we just chant it all together? Okay, she's putting the thumbs up. Okay, we'll do that. So we are on, and here's Jason tuning in as well. Okay, welcome, Jason. Welcome, Jason. Okay, so we're beginning chapter 5. Arjuna Uvacha, we're going to chant the verses together. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam chashamsasi yakshayayata yorikam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha sannyasa karma yogascha nishayasa karavubo tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vashishishyate. Yeya sa nitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kankshati nirdvando hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Sankhya yogo pritagbala pravadanti na panditaha ekam apyastita samyag ubayor vindate phalam yat sankhyae prapyate stanam tadyoge api gamyate ekam Sankyam cha yogam cha ya pashyati sa pashyati sanyasastu mahabaho dukam apto mayogata yoga yukta munir brahma nachire nadi gacchati. Okay, we'll go to these translations. Arjuna said, O Krishna, you speak of renunciation of actions. And then again, you speak of the path of selfless action. Therefore, please tell me clearly which is superior. So in these previous chapters, right, Krishna has spoken about karma yoga, which is involving continuing with your worldly duty, continuing with your action, but changing the inner, trying to change gradually the inner mood of attachment that we have. So performing the same thing, but trying to remove that selfish intent, carrying out our duties, but for some higher cause. And Krishna has also spoken of sannyasa karma, to give up, to renounce action. So Arjuna is understandably confused. Which is superior? The Supreme Lord said, both renunciation of action and the path of selfless action bring great benefit. Yet of the two, know that the way of selfless action is superior. So to continue, not to renounce completely action in this world, worldly activity, but to continue with the action, but changing that inner standpoint. This is higher. O mighty armed Arjuna, know that one who is free from attraction and aversion is truly renounced, though performing action. So real detachment is something internal. It is not something to be judged by one's external activity, but it is an internal quality. It cannot necessarily be detected from the exterior. And, Gurudev, he was making this point once, saying he used this word, shukshma, means subtle, that spiritual life, it is subtle. Spiritual life is a subtle transaction. And those who are wise and learned, they understand this. They are always reciprocating with the subtle plane. And that may or may not have manifestation in the physical plane, but they're always engaging with the higher, more subtle world. Their standpoint is there. And us who are in the gross physical world, we may or may not be able to understand, right? It is like someone who's dealing with laws of physics or chemistry, right? They're dealing with subtle laws that we don't understand, but they know the power of what they're doing, right? They're engaging with the subtle plane. They know if you combine these different elements together, certain reactions will come about, and we won't be able to understand that, but they can understand. And then at times there may be an expression of that within the world of our understanding and our perception, right? So our gurus, they are always engaging with the subtle plane, which we may not understand. One who is free from attraction and aversion. And we can also add here that this attraction and aversion, these are two things which come up a lot in Bhagavad Gita. Here, what is it? The Sanskrit here is dveshti. Dveshti is referring to aversion, and kankshati is referring to desire or hankering. And there are different Sanskrit words that are used at different, rag and dvesh. Sometimes they're framed with these other Sanskrit terms. Rag is referring to attachment, and dvesh, the same word, same root, aversion. So these are like these are two fundamental, this is like one of the fundamental aspects of the conditioned existence in this world, that we're always swinging between these two sides of the pendulum, like, dislike, attraction, aversion, exploitation, renunciation. They're actually two sides of the same coin. Although externally they may appear to be completely different, right? One is in the mode of enjoyment, exploitation, the other is withdrawal. But they're actually two sides of the same coin. They're both based upon selfishness. They're both based on consideration of our own interest, disconnected from the whole, disconnected from our natural, normal, and wholesome nature as giving, dedicating agents. So these are two things which, it's something to be aware of. They cloud our vision. They're like filters, right? We have our own kind of little pool of ideas, concocted ideas and likes and dislikes. And these things create filters which obscure our vision of the true nature of things, of the higher, more subtle nature of reality. So to be free from those things, it is a very great thing. And this is one of the famous praises of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, one of his godbrothers. There was that famous comment that he made about Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Sorry, there's some mics on. Could we turn off a mic? Okay, thank you. There was this famous comment of one of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's godbrothers that he made about Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He praised him for his strong common sense, deep intelligence, and the third one was disinterested nature. Disinterested nature. Disinterested means someone who is able to make assessments from a neutral standpoint. Not based on their own individual interest, free from that type of bias. It's a very valuable quality to have in spiritual culture. So one who, even though they're active in this world, engaging with the various beautiful or ugly things of this world, attractive or unattractive things of this world, is engaging with all these things, but without this type of reaction. Oh, this is nice, this is bad. I like this, I don't like this. That is a truly renounced person. That is a truly renounced person, one who is free from that. Because, and why is that valuable? Why is that meaningful? Because ultimately everything here is part of the same mud. Dvaite, but there's a famous line in Chaitanya Charitamrita from Mahaprabhu. Dvaite Bhadra Bhadra Gyan, Sab Mano Dharma, E Balo, E Manda, E Sab Brahma. That to differentiate, to distinguish in this world between good and bad, It is very foolish because it's all wrong. It's all a mistake. You know, it's all based on illusion. It's all part of the dream, you know, a good dream or a bad dream, but it's all part of the dream, you know. So, you know, it's like sometimes we can get into these petty arguments and then we realize, well, hang on, like the whole foundation of our argument has no meaning. You know, like people might get in arguments about fictional TV shows, right? About different characters, right? Sometimes that happens. It's like, hang on, this is all fiction. You know, it's all fake, it's all imaginary anyway. Why are we fighting about this? You know. So it's like that, you know. The one who is free from attraction and aversion is truly renounced, though performing action. For one who is free from duality easily attains liberation from bondage. I remember one time, maybe I'll avoid going into the details, but one of our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj's disciples, they did something which was an act of great renunciation, which was from societal standards kind of extreme. And our Gurudev commented about that, you know, when they are truly advanced, they won't need to do that. You know, when they're truly advanced, when they have true renunciation, they won't need to do that. They don't, you know, you don't need to make a show that I am renounced. You don't need to make a big declaration to the world, you know, or to ourselves that we are renounced. It is just something natural. You know, it is something natural and something that comes as an outcome of dedication, right? Ultimately, from the devotional standpoint, we're not interested in renunciation. We're interested in dedication, in spiritual attachment, right? And detachment is something that just follows along from that. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gave this interesting explanation of this word. One of the main words, that Sanskrit words that's used for renunciation is vairagya, which if you break it up, rag, we mentioned before, means attachment. And this vai is like negating, like without, right? So without attachment, this is vairagya, renunciation, attachment. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gave another explanation of this word, that this prefix, the prefix is v, this v, that it can also indicate the word vishesh. The word vishesh in Sanskrit, it means like, it refers to like something of a specific nature or a variegated nature. So he said it can also be used as an intensifier. So rather than free from attachment, it can mean like proper attachment, like superior attachment. You know, and that's really what we're interested in, you know, attachment to the higher plane, attachment to Krishna. You know, and then detachment will follow naturally behind it. It won't be a struggle. You know. Okay, so let's move on here. So for chapter 4, verse 4, the path of renunciation, which is indicated by the phrase Sankhya Yoga here. This Sankhya Yoga refers to this, and probably Jayadev can explain better. Is Jayadev there? Can you explain this? This is referring to this practice of like neti, right? This
I actually
Sankhya.
had a question then. When you were talking about then Vaibhava, is that second
Oh,
you?
no, I was talking about vairagya.
I
And
know. And then I was wondering how that applied to Vaibhav. It's why it's a word I like for some reason, and it came up. So I wonder if that same secondary use you're talking about, that Srila Sridhar Maharaj was talking about, applies in that sense. Because it's like Vaikunta without lamentation. You know, that
Mm,
first usage,
right.
Vaikunta, vairagya, and then I was wondering how does that apply to Vaibhav? Because you got me
Mm,
thinking. I hadn't
mm.
analyzed it before. Anyways, I got to do some research now.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And so you're asking me to comment on Sankhya Yoga?
Yes, this is referring to this practice of neti. Is that right? Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
want?
and analyzing the categories in a positive and negating way, I believe, too. And yeah, that's one of the primary processes is to negate that which is unreal, systematically.
But can you
I,
explain this for a beginner?
sure, if I'm wanting to understand what I am in an eternal sense, I might start sitting and I might experience my hand. Am I my hand? No, I'm experiencing my hand. And it might move in deeper. Am I my breathing? No, because I'm observing my breathing, so I must not be my breathing. And then there's that thinking part of me. Wait, but I'm observing the thoughts, so I must not be the thoughts. And that process keeps going deeper and deeper until one gets to the point of consciousness that they are considered the self in Sankhya Yoga, which is sort of the beginning of where bhakti's coming in.
Mm-hmm. So it has some use, and it's not anti-bhakti. It can be connected. And this it's this phrases we hear in this regard. Neti. Neti means like no, right? As I understand. So it's like kind of like through a process of negation, you're coming to what is real, right? And this Sankhya literally means counting. Is that right? Or like analysis. Chinmoy Prabhu, are you familiar with that?
I've heard it referred to as like numbers, Sankhya.
Mhm. Right. I think
in that way.
yeah, I think there's some range of
It's
use.
got that sung, right? So it's full, and then we just have to figure out what ka means. Probably something like full counting or expansion on counting or something like that. I'll look it up.
Narottam Nitai says empirical analysis.
Okay, so but in a broad sense, it's referring to renunciation, like rejection of what is unreal. That's the essence here. The path of renunciation and the path of selfless action are considered separate paths by the unwise, but not by the learned. So ultimately, these two things are one and the same, right? Because ideally, one is internally renounced, but also active in the world, right? One who perfectly follows either of these paths will achieve the result of both. If you can that's another thing, right? Like if you can genuinely follow this path of full renunciation, then that's cool, but it's very difficult. Right? To go live in a cave somewhere, right? It's a very difficult thing to do, you know? But rather, and this selfless action in the plane of bhakti will translate that as yukta vairagya. Yukta vairagya means properly adjusted renunciation, where everything is seen in relation to the higher interest. Everything is seen in relation to I'm going to write this down. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a very important phrase to remember in the practice of bhakti. Yukta vairagya. Okay, this is in our chat. And welcome Shravan, another friend who's joined us. So vairagya is the word I was mentioning earlier.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So vairagya is the word I was mentioning earlier, which is used to denote renunciation. And then yukta, it's the same root as yoga. So it means like properly adjusted, properly connected, right? One meaning of yoga is connection. So proper renunciation. This is what we're interested in devotion, or sometimes it's rendered as renunciation in devotion, where we're not totally renouncing everything, but rather we are giving up our selfish identification with those things. We're not going to be afraid of things that are beautiful, but because, we're afraid of our own attachment that comes, right? But rather we'll see them in connection with Krishna. Everything that's beautiful, everything that's tasty, everything that's attractive we'll connect as an offering to Krishna, and then it's all fine. You know, whereas the Maya, the impersonalists, those are the impersonalist school, they're afraid. Like, oh, this is something very beautiful. I'm going to be attracted to it. I'm going to enjoy it. And then I'm going to have to pay for it afterwards. So I'm going to avoid everything that's beautiful, everything that's attractive. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he gives one analogy, which is kind of like a very Bengali village analogy. that a herd of cows, they experienced once that their shed where they resided was on fire. And so then after that, they become afraid of the color red because they connect red with the fire that injured them and burned their residence. And so, you know, if they see red in the sky, then they become very afraid and frantic, you know. So in the same way, when we are in the plane of exploitation, and then we're experiencing the negative reactions that come as a result, then we want to withdraw from that plane. But then we become afraid of the things that tempt us, right? The things that tempt us. But actually, there's not, and then anything's beautiful. Oh, that's evil, right? There's nothing wrong with that beautiful man or beautiful woman. There's nothing wrong with that wonderful chocolate cake. You know, the only thing wrong is your own selfish association with it, right? So this is what Yukta Vairagya is about, you know, where we're trying to see all these things free from the lens of our selfish interest, see them in connection with Krishna. And so this is actually the real principle of devotion, but it also allows, it's also a very kind of generous practice because it allows for this transition, right? It gives space for us to gradually move to a real place of inner detachment. You know, it's like we're not being told, oh, you can't eat pizza anymore, but you can keep eating pizza, but work on that inner adjustment, right? That makes it easier, right? You got some space, you got something to work with there. So it's simultaneously representing the real spirit of devotion and also giving us room, giving us space to make a gradual transition to a higher angle of vision. Very beautiful. This is what is so beautiful about bhakti, you know. It's all inclusive, it's all accommodating, you know. From the lowest level to the highest level, there's a place for everyone. You know, it's a perfect system at every stage, at every level. It accommodates everyone at every stage. You know, it's not that you have to have a particular level of sense control before you can practice it. You know, it's not that you have to have perfected some, you know, asanas, you know, some yogic postures, or that you have to have a particular level of understanding. You have to pass an exam, you know, before you can practice it. But it's like at whatever level you're at, there's a place for you and there's room for you to grow. It's representing the organic nature of reality, you know, that we all have a particular part, and there it's something dynamic and living and moving and growing. You know. There was something else I wanted to say there, but I've forgotten. Anyone else want to share any comments? Are there questions or anything at this stage? Chinmoy Prabhu, anything?
Well, it reminds me of this idea of merging. We're very against this idea of merging. We don't want to merge with the Lord and everything, but there's only one instance where we do want to merge, and that's with the interest of the Lord. We want our interest to merge with the interest of the Lord. And I think that's what we're kind of talking about here. Like when the devotee was saying disinterested nature of Sridhar Maharaj, his interest has merged with the Lord. He has no self-interest. So, you know, that's our ultimate objective, is that our interests will merge with the interests of the Lord, and therefore we will have no attraction or repulsion to anything, because for our own self-interest. Everything will be done for the interest of the Lord.
Beautiful, beautiful. Very nice, very nice. And I see Narottam Prabhu has his hand up.
Yes, Didiji. I really like what Chinmay Prabhu said, the merging of their interests with the Lord. That is so aptly stated. And I want to reflect on, I guess, the meaning of yukta vairagya in the sense of seeing everything and everyone in relation with the Lord. And I guess this is a very higher, state of devotion where, like us, I forget which verse is in the Bhagavad Gita, but like a learned sage sees equally a brahmana, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. In the sense of, everyone's connection with the Lord. And then I guess yukta vairagya for me, it means that like giving up the fruits, especially we're in chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, where we're sort of like, giving up the fruits of our labor in service of the Lord. So we might be like working or something, but then using that money we get from work to buy flowers, to get the bhoga, to offer to Krishna, and helping support other devotional causes with the devotees we're with. So that's important, because, and my understanding is that if we even go to the grocery store, get the bhoga, despite them like selling meat at the grocery store, and we get the bhoga and we bring it home, that whole act of the time and effort and everything we did in order to bring the bhoga and make it and offer it, all of that, Krishna becomes a karma, in the sense of we don't, there's no like reaction for what we did. There's devotion. So in that sense, yukta vairagya, and I actually want to put myself through like some kind of like a self directed course for understanding yukta vairagya more properly, whether it's making more offerings and things like that, and knowing that all these things that I'm doing is going to be in service of Krishna. And one last thing I wanted to state is that our determination and resolve to be Krishna conscious, it really helps us to be Krishna conscious, in the sense of it is Krishna's mercy, but just like we can be strongly opinionated about various topics that happen in the world, like some people are or might be, but even we could be, in that same way. But if we are strongly motivated and opinionated on being Krishna conscious at all times, then we would chant more, we would do more, we would be more Krishna conscious. So that'll help us in really cultivating Krishna consciousness. We don't have to be necessarily fanatics, but at least for our mind, we can be more fixed. So that's some reflection I had. Let me share.
We will consciously try to be Krishna conscious. Very nice. I see Radhana Rupini has her hand raised too. Please, Didi. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Okay, you're unmuted now.
Okay. It reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita verse, and I'm sorry, it's really hard for me to memorize the Sanskrit parts, but I do memorize the English, so I remember them. But it says, "One who sees me in all things and all things in me are never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to them." So in our daily life, at least I can speak for my own mundane daily life. I don't know about all of you are more exalted devotees, but everything we do to remember Krishna in that action, whether we're cooking or whether we're going to see our friends or in the garden or anything, whenever we look at something, if we can relate it to Krishna and remember Krishna, then it's helping. it's helping us along our way. Yeah. And it's very hard because we have to remember we are conditioned souls, and boy, do I remember that, because I have so many faults.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Radhana Rupini. Yes, and as our faith develops, then more and more we will find that everything we come in connection with is bringing us closer to Krishna. Everything is reminding us, everything is bringing us in. Even things that at a lower stage may challenge us, right? At a higher stage, they may encourage our faith, right? So yes, there's a very beautiful line of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he says, one whose inner eye is awakened will find traces of divinity everywhere. One whose inner eye is awakened will find traces of divinity everywhere. And how, one with that higher vision, everything they see will stimulate them in their remembrance of the Lord. And he quotes this beautiful line in Chaitanya Charitamrita, describing how Mahaprabhu, when Van Deki Vrindavan, I don't remember the Bengali, but saying that when he sees a forest, he's reminded of Vrindavan. When he sees a hill, he's reminded of Govardhan. When he sees a river, he's reminded of the Jamuna. Everything will bring us into the center. Everything will bring us in closer. And now that's something that we're practicing, right? But at a higher stage, it will be automatic. Just like, think of it, someone who you love, if you love someone very much, everything will remind you of that person, right? Like one of my dear god sisters in London, her mother just passed away, and she said it, and she's struggling so much. And she said, if I go to the supermarket and I see, oh, that's my mother's favorite biscuits, these are the flowers that my mother liked, and so on and so forth, right? When you love someone so much, and every little thing, it will remind you of them.
Yeah.
You see a particular color, when Mahaprabhu sees the color blue, he faints in ecstasy because he's reminded of the peacocks, that Krishna loves the peacocks.
It's only when we, being a conditioned soul, it's only when we start being self-centered or fall into that trap, do we become a little bit on the miserable side.
Sorry, can you say that again? I didn't quite see.
Let's see. It's only when we start to become a little bit self-centered or selfish, that at a certain point, you become miserable. It's more joyous to be thinking of Krishna, or even a higher Vaishnava, and how to please them, your spiritual master. Because in my own small life, I experience that when I fall into the trap of, I have to defend myself because I can't be a doormat, or but it's not good to be a doormat, or I just become in a more selfish manner, and it's the truth. Then I find myself becoming extremely miserable. Then I have to pull myself out of that consciousness, because I have to start to try my best to see Krishna everywhere. And also it's, when you find Vaishnavas that are spreading the name of the Lord and doing such great service, or then that's, if you are earning some type of a good income, that's where to put what's being Krishna's giving to you. That's where to put it, to help to spread the name of the Lord, you know. Anyway, just my thoughts.
Beautiful. We're very happy to hear your thoughts. Anyone else want to share anything, or should we read a few more verses? Okay, well, let's finish these translations. We didn't finish the translations. So verse 5, the state achieved by the renunciation of action is also achieved by the performance of selfless action. One who sees these two paths to be one and the same actually sees. O mighty hero, without selfless action, mere renunciation of action is the cause of sorrow. But the wise man who engages in selfless action swiftly attains to the absolute. Okay, we can continue then with the next verses. So picking up from verse 7, we can chant together. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarvabhutadva bhutatma korvanapi na lipyate naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit pashyan shinvan sprishan jigram ashnan gachan sapan swasan pralapan vishajan virnan unmishan nimishan napi Indriyarteshu vartanta iti darayan brahmanyadaya karmani sangam chaktva karotiya lipyate na sapapena padmapatrami vambasa kayena manasa buddhya kevaler indriyarapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam chaktvatma shundaye. So from verse 7, the clean-hearted person thus engaged in yoga controls his mind and senses. Becoming filled with affection and compassion for all beings, although fully active, he is never implicated by any action. So this is kind of interesting, isn't it? That one of the natural results of a purified consciousness, of an elevated consciousness, of becoming free from selfishness, is that you will be filled with affection and compassion for all beings. You know, right? It's very interesting, this point, you know. Because when the ahankara, when the false ego is very strong, then our own existence appears so much kind of amplified. That's the word I'm looking for. You know, when the ahankara is very strong, the I, right? The ahankara means the I, me, and mine. And so when that's making a lot of noise, when that's amplified, then we become insensitive to others. You know, we become insensitive. This is why there are very wicked persons in this world who have committed the most atrocious acts against humanity, right? Because they're desensitized from the suffering of others. Their own existence is so magnified. Their own sense of self is so exaggerated that they're not able to perceive, to acknowledge, to consider the feelings of others, right? No, the significance of the existence of other living entities, right? And of course, there's a spectrum, right? Greater to lower degrees of that. But once that noise of the false ego starts to die down, then we become more aware, right? We become more conscious of others and what are their needs and what are their feelings, what is the significance of their existence. You know, we start to tune into that, to perceive the value of that more, because we're not so stuck on our own individual existence. So it's kind of interesting how that's being brought in here, that point, naturally. So then naturally, right, if you are feeling more the condition of others, you become compassionate, right? And you will have affection for them. Chinmoy Prabhu, raising your hand.
Yeah, this is a very nice sloka, because my sister, she's an English teacher, and one of the books she taught was the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the questions the students had, most of all, it seemed like in the Bhagavad Gita, you were being taught to be a person with no feelings. Happiness and distress, ignore that, be equal, have an equilibrium. It seemed like that's the type of yogi that the Bhagavad Gita was promoting. And so it seems like there's a difference between like mundane qualities and like divine or devotional qualities, senses and stuff like that. And I think that this sloka kind of brings that out, that like, we're not happiness and distress in the material world, but still there's happiness and distress for a person who's living on that divine plane, but just different quality of feeling.
Yeah, it is actually interesting. It also kind of struck me. It almost feels like out of consonance, this verse, because normally when we hear these descriptions of like the yogis, it's all about like kind of detachment, and you don't really hear about this other side. So yeah, it struck me too. But naturally, when their consciousness is evolved, then naturally this feeling will come, because there will be more consideration of others, more awareness, more consciousness. So yeah, interesting. Okay, moving on with the translations, going to verse 8. The realized karma yogi performs the activities of seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, speaking, evacuating, grasping objects, blinking the eyes, and so on. And he understands my sense organs, eyes, ears, skin, nose, and tongue function in relation to their respective objects of form, sound, touch, smell, and taste. Thus he considers, I do not perform any action at all. So as one's consciousness develops, then the distinction between the shell and what's inside, that distinction will be felt to be more and more clear. The car and who's inside of the car. Because normally in the conditioned state, these two things are being identified as one and the same, right? These activities, that's who I am. These thoughts, these desires, that's who I am. But as we evolve, then the distinction will be, the separating layers will become more and more clear to us. And we will feel, these are all things that are just playing out. These are like instruments. The senses are like instruments engaging with the sensory world, right? But that's not the I who's within. One who, though living in this world, selflessly offers all his actions to the Supreme Lord, is not polluted by sin, as a lotus leaf remains on the water, yet is untouched by it. That analogy, because for the longest time, I thought this was referring to, when you have some leaves, you can have like a droplet of water and the water kind of remains distinct, right, from the leaf, and it can like roll around. I thought that's what it was referring to, but can anyone, maybe Chinmoy, or can How do you understand that analogy exactly?
I mean, I guess, I mean, I know there are some lotus leaves where like the stem comes up from the water and then the lotus is actually above the water. It's not
Okay.
actually touching it. And I know there's some leaves that actually lie on the water, but I believe there are some lotus plants, but maybe Jayadev might know too.
What I've been told is that what delineates a lotus from other types of lilies is the lilies, like Chinmoy's saying, the lilies float on the water with the leaves flat, whereas the lotus comes up through the mud, comes out and blooms, goes above the water and blooms clean, even though it's birthed in the mud under the water. And again, yeah, I don't know if that helps or that's what you were wondering.
Wait, so you're saying that generally lilies, they're on the water, but lotus stems, they grow above, so they grow higher.
I've been told that that's what delineates a lotus from other lilies, because where we are here in Santa Barbara, both regular water lilies and lotuses will grow, and they almost look the same. And yeah, what you can tell is different is it has a stalk that comes up from the flat leaves on the water, and the flower comes up out of the water. And we got a hand raised here. Just you can unmute.
Yeah, I think you're right, Prabhu. I've grown lotuses here, and they do have lotuses when I travel up north, and it is above the water, like you said, and the lilies are on the water. So they look the same, but one is above and one is on. And it seems to me that this is like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it's like it's like being in this world, but not of this world. But lotuses are very beautiful. We have them here, white, all different colors.
Yeah, Radhana Rupini lives in paradise in Hawaii.
Only
Yeah.
if your mind allows you to be in paradise.
Right. Okay, well that's helpful. But in any case, the main point here, as Radhana Rupini says, is that this realized soul, this person with proper detachment, although they're active in this world, they're not incurring the reactions of this world, right? Because of that inner adjustment. By giving up attachment, the karma yogis perform action merely through the mind, body, intelligence, and even the senses for self-purification. So this is another interesting point. Like through the proper inner adjustment, not only can you not incur reactions, you can actually become purified. The same thing that previously may have binded you, the same activity, it can unbind you, can purify. The same activity which previously would contaminate you, through this inner adjustment of consciousness, it can actually purify you. It is a wonderful thing. Eating the food of this world, right? That is a binding thing. But if we are taking that food with the higher connection, the inner connection, then it will actually liberate us. It is no longer in the jurisdiction of our senses, but it has that higher connection there. Let's see. We just have a few minutes left. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should stop there our reading for today. For stopping at verse 11. Does anyone want to add any final comments before we close? And Chintamani posted a link for those who don't have it already, or Zoom class notices. Narottam Prabhu, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say that in regards to the lotus and the water, I mean, it's one of the devotional qualities is to be a poet, and in the sense, naturally find the good, I guess, amongst a lot of difficulties. So and see the good qualities, and kind of sort of fan the spark in a way, and be detached from it. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, I guess being more of like a poetic, and finding the deeper meaning behind things is just a devotional quality. I think it's one of the six. How many devotional qualities? I think I forget, but there's like 60,
I would say
64 arts.
unlimited.
Yeah, unlimited. There's like 64 arts that Krishna and Balaram learned from their spiritual master, and then there's like 26 qualities of a devotee. There's so many different qualities, but yeah, this whole thing about despite the whatever state or condition we might be in, but being fixed in Krishna consciousness is so important. I just wanted to reflect on that. You probably, a good poet can probably write like a multitude of poems simply based on that lotus thing. But yeah.
Well, we're gonna make that your homework, Narottam Prabhu. we want a poem, and it has to be in Sanskrit, about how the lotus leaf stays above the water.
Next life. I think Srila Prabhupada said it would take 3,000 years to teach the whole world Sanskrit.
What did you say?
I said in my next life. I don't remember exactly, but I think Srila Prabhupada said it would take like
Who said
3,000 years. I think Srila Prabhupada. I mean, in the sense, like, he might have been like exaggerating in a bit, but it's important to understand the meaning over just the language. But yeah, totally, I understand.
Nice. Anyone else want to share any final thoughts before we close today? Govinda, anything you want to share? Right. Kanaka Kalata, any comments? Okay, well, maybe we'll ask Gangalila to make the final words for today and pray us out for today.
Okay.
And then unless Chintamani wants to say anything. Is she still here, Chintamani? Oh, she had to go maybe. Okay, sorry, please go ahead, Gangalila.
Yes, so may we be more like a lotus. So we all come from the same muck, but we are aspiring to rise not only out of the muck, but above the water. So that we shall we want these high ideals. We want to be measured and seen by our ideals, and let's like walk our own talk for ourselves and everybody around us. And then we can, be pretty cute to see each of us being a little lotus moving around, and that would be another chapter. But we can unmute and we can chant 3 rounds of the Maha Mantra together. And you just always know that if we chant by ourselves, and if we do our rounds, if we do it in our heads, and if we are doing it together on Zoom here, that it just does a whole lot of, it creates this healing square around the globes and the universes and the universes. So let's join into that healing vibration. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram, Hare Ram,
Ram
Ram
Hare.
Ram, Hare Hare.
Thank you so much, Gangalila. Look, Narottam, there was a poem from Gangalila.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have to only translate it to Sanskrit now.
Jai Shlavati Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.
Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai.
Jai.
beautiful Vaishnavas and sincere seekers ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Jai Vishakha Devi Dasi ki.
Jai. Jai. Hare Krishna.